TriCaster features a variety of virtual inputs. Now, a virtual input is a lot like having a switcher inside of a switcher, and it allows you to set up a complex layered video effect and then access it like any other channel in the switcher. Let's go ahead and take a look. The virtual inputs are located here on the program and preview bus, and there are setup areas for each one of the virtual inputs right down here under the tabs for V1 through V8. So each one of these is a setup area for each individual virtual input. Now, we're going to start out on V1, and when you first start out on a virtual input, you have input A and input B, and input A is your foreground and input B is your background. But right now, we're not dealing with any inputs that have been live matted. There's no key going on here, so we're only seeing input A right now, which is input number 1. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to set up our live mat controls to remove the green from the background of our talent. Now to do that, we're going to mouse over the input and we're going to click on the gear. And again, there are two tabs. There's the input settings tab and then the live mat and cropping tab. So we're going to go to live mat and cropping. And the first thing to do is to select the color that you want to remove. Now this can be any color. Of course, green and blue are the colors most commonly used. So you're going to left click on the eyedropper and then keep the left click held down, drag over to the color. Notice that you see the color swatch here changing to whatever color that eyedropper is over. So you're going to pick the color right off the interface that you want to get rid of and let go. And it's going to pull a key for you. Now you also have some tolerance controls here for adjusting the key level, some smoothing controls to get rid of any sort of jaggy edges you might have around the talent. You do have some luminance controls here as well for further adjustment, and some spill suppression to get rid of any green that might be spilling onto the talent from the background. Now, one trick to get a better key is to resample the green, and you can left click and try different areas of the green, because your green screen may not be uniformly lit. There may be a gradient or you may have some shadows, and again, sampling different levels of green sometimes will allow you to very quickly and easily adjust that key and get it looking great. Now once you have pulled the key, we noticed that in this particular shot we can still see Kiki. Kiki is peeking in on the left hand side and her hands come into this shot from time to time as well. And we want to be able to remove that, and we can do that with our cropping controls. There are cropping controls for left, right, bottom, and top. So I'm going to use the left-hand controls here, and I'm going to start dragging it in. And as I do, I'm literally drawing a hard line. I'll get all the way to Rex. I can see, pull back a little bit, leaving Rex, and now you've been able to crop out Kiki and her hands from the shot, just leaving the great-looking key of Rex. Now what you're seeing is input A keyed over input B, and you can change input B to any input of the TriCaster. So you can key the talent over any of the live inputs coming in, you could key them over a computer source coming in on the network inputs, put them over a PowerPoint or a web page. You can even key them over a video playing back inside of the DVR. You could key them over any still image, any input in the TriCaster. Probably the coolest thing that you can do with our virtual inputs is use one of our live set virtual sets. Let's go ahead and take a look at creating a virtual set effect. Now, we've already got our talent keyed over a background. We're simply going to click on the gear right here, and this is going to launch the media browser, and it's going to show you the large variety of virtual sets available out of the box with the TriCaster. We're going to go ahead and use the Plaza set. Now, with each virtual set, you have some different options. You have different camera angles. Here's a center camera angle, a left camera angle, and a right camera angle. You also have some double boxes that match the graphic look of that virtual set. And this virtual set also includes a center monitor view. And this is a different zoom target. You do have the ability inside of the virtual set editor, a great add-on for work with the TriCaster, to adjust where the zoom is going to happen. And the default sets that come with the TriCaster, some of them also have some of these modifications where the center camera angle is going to zoom in on the center, but the center monitor will zoom in on the talent and the monitor. But for this, let's start out just by loading up the center camera angle and click OK, and Rex is instantly transported into the virtual set. Now what you're looking at is input A is the talent behind the desk, and input B is whatever is playing back on the monitor here. Now, one of the great things about working with the virtual sets in the TriCaster is you don't need to have a camera operator. Even though you're working with a lockdown camera with no camera operator whatsoever, from the TriCaster you have the ability to zoom on this virtual set. You can click on these 4 thumbnails and you can snap to 4 different predefined levels of zoom, and you can actually define that level of zoom. By left clicking and dragging on the gauge up above that thumbnail, you can determine where you want that zoom level to be. Now, it defaults to 0, 33, 66, and 100, giving you nice incremental zoom levels. But again, you can define them and set them however you want them to work within your live production. Now, you also have the ability to animate that zoom, either by clicking on Animate Zoom here in the interface. There's also a button here on the control surface for turning Animate Zoom on and off. So, here on the control surface, we have our virtual input delegate. You're going to select which virtual input you're controlling. We're on V1. And now you can control the zoom level here by clicking on the 4 levels of zoom, or turn on Animate Zoom and animate that zoom over time. Now, you can control the speed of that animated zoom, again, here in the interface, and you can even change it while it's zooming. You can also adjust the speed from the zoom rate knob that you have here on the control surface, and you can either twist it to dial in a rate of speed, or it's also a button, and you can press on it and it will snap between the 3 different levels, slow, medium, and fast, the 3 different preset speeds that you have available for zooming within the TriCaster. Now, there's also a manual control on the interface right here you can grab with the mouse and you can use, and a manual control available on the control surface. Right in the positioner area, you can select virtual zoom, and again, it's going to work with whatever virtual input you currently have selected. And now you can drag or you can pull or push on the joystick and have an actual zoom control, just like you're zooming the camera. Now, another great thing about the TriCaster is you can crop, scale, position, and rotate every input, just like you saw us doing with the overlays or creating the picture-in-picture effect earlier. We can also do that with any of the inputs coming into our virtual inputs. So, for instance, if we want to position Rex or scale Rex, again, I want to make sure that I have the virtual input selected. I'm working with virtual input 1, and I'm going to go to virtual A. That's my input A bus here on virtual input 1. Now, select position and scale, and I can position Rex left and right, up and down in the shot. We can twist the knob to scale him bigger or smaller. And again, you've got a reset button to reset it. We'll go ahead and put him here in the center of the shot like that. Now, you can also adjust the video that's happening on the screen over here to the side by selecting virtual input B. Now you can scale that video up and down. We could actually zoom in and just get a portion of the video. We can move that video around again inside of that monitor. And if we just want to get back to the default, you can just hit reset. So, total control over both input A and input B that are being fed into that virtual input. The positioner control for any switcher row inside of a virtual input setup tab is also available from the interface by clicking on the crosshairs here at the end of that switcher row. And here you'll find positioning, rotation, scaling, and cropping controls directly in the interface. Now, there are 8 virtual inputs available here, and each virtual input can have a different setup on it. And again, so I've got literally my center camera angle set up on virtual input number 2. I have my left-hand camera angle with a single shot of Rex. And again, you can see the monitor, and if you look at our 2-shot, Rex is right next to the monitor, so that makes sense. And my right camera angle, I've zoomed in, and you just see Kiki. And you actually can see Rex's hand pop into that shot every now and then, so I might want to crop that out as well. And again, to do that, I'm simply going to come over here to Kiki's input, and I'm going to crop in from the right-hand side and remove Rex's hand. Again, maybe I want to center her up a little bit. I'm on virtual input number 3. I'm going to go to my delegate and select virtual input number 3, virtual A, position, and I can pop her over into the center shot a little bit more. So I've got 3 different camera angles. I've got my center shot, I've got my left shot with Rex, and my right shot with Kiki on 3 different virtual inputs. Now, on a 4th virtual input, I have Kiki and Rex in a completely different virtual set. So you can literally jump from set to set just by going from one virtual input to another. You don't just have to do sets and camera angles. We can also do double box effects. And again, most of the sets come with double box effects that match their graphical look, and there are also some double box effects that are just standalone double box effects available as well. And there are also things in here like split screens and other types of double box effects available, all that come with the TriCaster. Now, on this particular input, what I've done is I've loaded up, let's go to virtual input number 7 here, and I've told the virtual input that I want on virtual input A, I want to see network 1, and that's my computer coming in. Now, on virtual input B, I've set it to black. Now, again, I'm going to select virtual input 7, that's the virtual input that I'm on, position and scale, virtual A, and I can now pan and scan on my computer within the virtual input using the joystick. And you can zoom way in, and it really doesn't break down. You get some great looking zoom video here that you can zoom around and then again zoom out. So interactively control the screen of the computer that's coming in as an input to the TriCaster, and again you can always reset it to get it back to normal. So just a few things possible with the virtual inputs inside of the TriCaster as far as the effects that are possible. Now, each virtual input also has an overlay that's separate from the 2 downstream keys available in the switcher. So let's go to virtual input number 1, and we have virtual input number 1 here on the switcher. There's a third row available in the switcher for the setup of a virtual input, and this is the overlay row. And if you look at the control surface, all of this is the same. So virtual input number 1, I've got virtual input A that I can control, I've got input B that I control for that virtual input, and I've got overlay right here. I also have the ability to take and to auto that overlay, and I have those controls here as well, take and auto overlay. So again, I'm simply going to select stills. Now we're going to go and select a still that has alpha channel in it, and again that overlay can be brought up either by take or auto here or by take or auto here on the control surface. I'm going to go ahead and hit take, and we see that we now have that overlaid. Now, you do have the ability to adjust that like every other overlay and every other input. So again, we want to make sure that we have the virtual inputs selected that we're working with, V1, and you've got a button that allows you to select the virtual overlay. So now we can scale that virtual overlay down, say put it over here in the corner. Now that overlay is attached to that input. If I go to any other virtual input, you don't see the overlay. If I go to any other actual input, you don't see the overlay. You only see the overlay when you're on virtual input number 1 because it's attached to it, and it's completely separate from these two. You have those two as well, and let's take DSK1 and move it over here, and you can see that I'm using stills for DSK1, and I'm also using stills for the overlay inside the virtual input, so they're the same thing. Now, you may not want to do that. You may want to have, of course, separate overlays for each of those 8 virtual inputs, and I don't want to be tied to the stills bin or the titles bin. Well, to alleviate this problem, the TriCaster has frame buffers. Now, each virtual input has its own frame buffer. This is kind of like having a file folder over here off in the distance that I can take an image, a title, or a still, and I can copy it into that file folder and then tell the overlay to look there for its source. So now, if you change anything inside the stills or the titles bin, it doesn't affect that overlay in any way, shape, or form. Let me show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to come over here to the NewTek overlay, and I'm going to right-click on it, bring up the context menu, and say I want to send that to V1 frame buffer, the frame buffer for virtual input number 1. Now, it's not using what's selected in the stills bin. It's using the image that it's copied into the frame buffer. So you can see that if we go to our overlay channel now for our virtual input, you have the ability to select overlay buffer. And if we go to the stills bin and we click on something else, now we have 3 individual overlays happening. Again, our 2 downstream keys are here. That overlay is locked down to virtual input number 1. The downstream keys, they show up on every input, but the overlay that's attached to the virtual input gets locked to it. And again, you can have a different one for each input. Let's go over to Kiki's input here, and we're going to choose a different one. We're going to choose this NewTek TriCaster one, and that's going to frame buffer for V3. And again, I'm going to select V3, frame buffer. We bring that up. Now you see I've got the TriCaster logo up there. Back here on V1, I've got a NewTek logo over there. And they're locked to these virtual inputs. They're not on any other input. Again, 8 virtual inputs, each with its own frame buffer, means 8 individual overlays in addition to the 2 downstream keys available in the switcher. That's 10 independent overlays available when using the virtual inputs in the TriCaster. Right here you have the controls for the overlay, and we'll come back to V1 here. You can see that we can take that on and off, or we can auto it in and out. And again, you can select effects here to fly that on and off as well. And that's separate from the effects that are flying on and off the DSKs. So each overlay, even if you're using all 3 of them on one virtual input, can all fly in and out from a different direction or have a different effect to come on and off the screen. And all of these controls, again, are also right here on the control surface. The ability to select the transition that you want to use for the overlay is here. Let's go to V1. And you can select the transition that you want, and you can also change the speed of that transition. You also have the ability to change out those transitions. You don't have to use the ones that are in there by default. Just like the other transitions, you can click on one, click on the gear, go to Browse, and load up any transition that you want from the transition bank and use that as the transition to bring that graphic on and off the screen. Now, just like in the media players, the virtual input setup areas have presets. And this will allow you to create 20 different virtual setups for each of the virtual inputs. So again, we're on virtual input number 1 in the virtual input number 1 tab. And if I mouse over here, you see that we have a lot of different setups here. And if you click on any of them, you can instantly change out the complete setup inside of that virtual input to a completely different virtual set. We have different looks and feels that you can get to instantly. And again, you saw that the very first time I click on one, it may have to set itself up. It kind of went to a background matte effect, and then the virtual set popped in. But if you go ahead and you select all of these before your live show happens, it will cache them. And then you'll have smooth transitions from one preset to another. Now, there is one virtual set that comes with the TriCaster that's a little bit different. And it allows you to put a wide variety of graphics in the background of the virtual set. Not just one monitor, but lots of monitors, and even a ticker tape. It's called the Nightly Show, and let's go ahead and take a look at that. I'm going to go to an empty preset here, and I'm going to load up the Nightly Show. So we'll just scroll down, we'll find the Nightly Show, here it is, and we're going to load it up. Now, if I go over to DDR number 2, we're using DDR number 2 right now as input B, and that you would think is feeding this monitor, but in reality, we'll run this clip, and I'm going to loop it. I have a loop control in the DDR right here. We're going to loop that, and now I'm feeding all of these monitors. I'm feeding the ticker tape, these 3 monitors, all of the monitors that are happening. Even the monitors back here in the control room are being fed video, and all that video is coming from one video clip. It happens to be this video clip right here. So this virtual set is smart enough to break this single video clip up into different monitors and then map them onto those monitors. Even these text scrolls are mapped onto our ticker tape up here, giving us the illusion of a lot of video playing in the background of this virtual set. And what's great about it is you can modify that video. You can create your own video clip like the one that we're using and then replace all of the video that we have in there with your video. Replace the ticker tape with your messaging. Let me show you how that works. Included with the content is a template. And I'm going to go ahead, and it's this template right here. So if you go to Add and you look in the NewTek folder, all the way down at the bottom, you'll see there's a couple of different variables for the clip that you can use to fill all the monitors inside of this set. And I'm going to load this one up. And again, if I play this, you'll see that it changes out the background screen a little bit. We now have a different screen here. And again, we've changed out some of the things just by changing this video clip that we're playing. And we can change out everything that's happening in the screen. But how do you make your own? Well, you use a template. So let's go ahead and take a look at the template. So this is what the template looks like. But when you use that as the source for input B and you have the live set actually up and running, you can see where all the video is going to end up. I know that whatever I map to number 1 is going to be here, 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth. And if you look at the template, you can see that all of those numbers are there. So you know exactly where the video is going to end up when you map it in. So simply load this image up into your editor or into your image manipulation program or After Effects or whatever, and create your own video clip using this as a template. Scale the video down so that it fits inside of each one of those boxes. So simply set up your own video clip, mapping and sizing your videos so that they go over the top and they fill all of the areas of this template. Render that out as a video clip, load that video clip up into DDR number 2, and then use it with the nightly show, and you can completely customize all of the videos playing in the background of the nightly show. Now the TriCaster comes with a large variety of really great looking virtual sets, but there's a great add-on available for these TriCasters called the Virtual Set Editor. Now the Virtual Set Editor will allow you to make changes to virtual sets, allow you to colorize any of the elements of the sets, allow you to replace objects, remove objects, make it from a 1-person to a 2-person set, from a seated to a standing set, literally change everything about it. And it comes with a variety of virtual sets that you can just modify right out of the box and go, but it also allows you to create your own virtual sets from your own content. So you can compose sets even in Photoshop and then bring them into Virtual Set Editor and create live sets for use as virtual sets in the TriCaster. It's a great add-on. Make sure to check out the NewTek website or ask your NewTek reseller about the Virtual Set Editor.